Welcome back to Cooking with Dad. Special episode today. We actually have a guest with us.
Hi.
My daughter Ezra. So she actually named the show, by the way. It's probably a year ago or so.
Yeah.
We actually kind of came up with the concept of this show, Cooking with Dad, just cooking together. She loves to cook. As a matter of fact, when she took some sort of college courses through the summer, one of the things she took was a culinary class. So she learned how to hold the knife and how to cut and things like that. It was really pretty interesting. So today, as promised, chicken noodle soup. We've got some carrots here, we've got some parsley, we've got our celery, we've got some onion, we've got our secret weapon that I love, better than bouillon. Excellent. If you haven't used that, you should. It's great. We'll be using that later. Then we've got some chicken broth, got some of our spices, and of course we've got our chicken. Now, if I was doing this, if my preference would be to use a whole chicken. But today we're going to use chicken thighs because we've had these. They need to be cooked. So we're going to use chicken thighs. If you don't prefer that, you can use any part of the chicken, or again, you can use a whole chicken. We're going to put these in the Instant Pot. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to start getting our broth together. And our chicken noodle soup is going to be a little bit different. Might even lean a little bit to chicken and noodles. But we'll talk a little bit about that as well later. So first things first, let's get this chicken on. Okay, we've got our chicken here in the Instant Pot. We've added 2 cups of water. And really we haven't added, or not really, we haven't added any sort of spices or anything like that. It's really not necessary. You can. It's not going to hurt anything. You could put some broth in here. You could put better than bouillon in here, bouillon cube. You could put some, rosemary, whatever you want to do. I've found it's not necessary. Now, what you will notice, however, is we have everything from the chicken in there. In terms of the thigh. So we've got skin in here, we've got bones in here, we've got all that in here. Now, Ezra, are we going to have skin and bone in our final product, our final soup?
No.
No. But what we do want is we want skin and bone flavor in our soup. And we'll need to do that. And in order to do that, we're going to need to cook it all together. Makes it a little harder on us because we're going to have to separate the chicken out and pull the skin off and cut the bone out and that type of thing. But after it's in the Instant Pot, I assure you there won't be much work to get the bones out. So we're going to set this in here for about 30 minutes. It'll be ready. We will be back and we'll start talking about our flavors and our fragrances and our herbs and things like that. Okay, we're back. Ezra and I are cutting up what we would call our aromatics. I've got some celery here, and I want to talk a little bit about cutting that up. Ezra is cutting up our carrot. Then we're going to hit our onion and some parsley. Celery. First of all, of course, we're going to cut off the ends. But the one thing about celery in this scenario where we're making chicken noodle soup, we want this. Okay, we want these little bit of some of these leaves. It can be another bit of an aromatic. It's also, to be honest with you, it's a little bit of just the aesthetic. You see a few green leaves floating on top of your chicken noodle soup. It just looks hearty and wholesome. Looks like someone put some love in it, right? So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to pick off a few of these leaves. We're going to rinse, of course, all of our vegetables beforehand. And then just with the celery leaves, we're just going to kind of pulverize them a little bit, chop them up. Doesn't have to be real tiny. Don't leave them real big. Just think about it. If you're eating chicken noodle soup, what size of leaves and herbs and things like that do you expect to see in your bowl? Those. Next thing, as we're getting these ready, we're going to bring in our stew pot. My famous red pot. My girls will tell you. I cannot tell you how many chilies, spaghettis, soups, popcorn. Can't tell you how much this family has eaten out of this pot. So it's my good soup pot. We're going to get a little bit of olive oil, just tablespoon or 2. Get that going, and then we're going to get our aromatics in here, and we're going to start getting everything softened up. One of the things we don't really want is anything crunchy in our soup. So put this, the celery, the celery leaves, the spices, the parsley, all those things will be done at last. You want to put in all those things last, and we'll cover that. So we're going to get this chopped up. We're going to get our onions, our carrots, and our celery in the olive oil and get them softening up. Again, we're going to use a wooden spoon. So we'll be back when we get it going. Okay, so we're back. We've got our aromatics going, and they're looking good. We've added our celery. We've added onion. We've added celery leaf. We've added carrot. We've got olive oil in here. We've also added about a tablespoon of minced garlic. And we've added a couple good, healthy tablespoons of our better than bouillon mix. And now we are ready to go ahead and add our broth. And we're going to add quite a bit. As we talked earlier, this is leaning a little bit more towards chicken and noodles. And the reason for that is the type of noodles we're going to use. And I will discuss that when we put the noodles in. But we had a little bit of broth left over in one of ours, so we went ahead and used it. And then we're going to put in two 32-ounce broths. So we're adding about 64 ounces, a little bit more than that. So we're about a half a gallon of broth here. So we're going to try to get that going. So you want to turn your heat back up. You want to get this to a boil. Now, you don't want it to be a rolling boil for an extended amount of time, but you do want to get it to a boil and really start getting those carrots and the celery and the onion, really get that down to where it's not crunchy. So we're just going to let that go for a little bit. Now, we did add our celery leaves that we chopped up, and we also added something else. We added rosemary. If you guys are like me, and if you're watching this, you seem to probably enjoy watching people cook. If you're like me, you're a fan of Alton Brown. Has good eats. Now, Alton Brown, I absolutely love him. I love watching him cook and his recipes and the science to it and all those types of things. But the one area that we disagree on is rosemary. He doesn't like it. He almost never uses it, and he's even expressed that. I like it a lot. I use it on poultry. I use it with pork. I use it with beef. I really like the smell of it. I like what it does when it's mixed with those meats. So to each his own, his or her own. We're also going to go ahead and just take a normal Italian seasoning. It's going to have a little bit of everything in here we want: oregano, thyme, a little bit more rosemary, and we're going to put a pretty good amount in there, probably a half tablespoon. We will go ahead and put a lid on this, and again, let it come to a boil, and it won't be too much longer and our chicken will be done. We'll be right back. Okay, so we've got this coming to a nice boil. It actually did come to a boil. Now I've lowered the temperature and got it down to a little bit more of a simmer. We're going to bring it back up a little bit. And it's going to be time to add a couple things, and then we're going to talk about our noodles that we talked about and how it's kind of influences our dish. One thing, we're going to add a couple bay leaves. So go ahead. Let's say 3. There's a lot of liquid in there. Again, half gallon or more. Plus we got 2 more cups in the pressure cooker, an Instant Pot as well. The other thing we did was we set aside some aromatics. We've saved some of our celery leaves, and we've got those chopped up, and then we've also chopped up some curly parsley, probably 1.5 cups, I would say. You got to be a little bit careful with this because you can't just chop it up without kind of paying attention, because some of these will have a little bit of, I guess for lack of a better term, little twigs in there. They aren't, I mean, they're soft. They would probably cook down, but they're just a little too hardy probably to be putting in our soup. So we're going to set these aside to the very end. When the chicken gets done, about the time the chicken gets done, we're going to put our noodles in, and that's where I want to talk about this dish. We're going to use Ream's noodles. If you're not familiar with Ream's noodles, these are not dried noodles, these are not fresh noodles. What these are fresh noodles that have been frozen. So for years, I made noodles for Thanksgiving, Easter, what have you, and to be honest with you guys, and I know some of you disagree with me, nobody's going to know a difference. I'm telling you, this is a quality product, and it's not just Ream's. The frozen noodles that you find in your local grocery store are quality product. Why I want to mention that, though, this is not like we're going to put in some dried egg noodles. It's not like spaghetti. It's not like macaroni. I mean, they're going to get larger, but because they're actually fresh noodles, they are going to take a lot of liquid. So probably what will happen is we will have chicken noodle soup today, and then tomorrow we will have something that resembles more closely to chicken and noodles. So if you want to turn that back into chicken noodle soup, you just add more broth, heat it up, and you have chicken noodle soup again. But we'll show you what our dish here is like. We'll be back in just a minute. Our chicken is almost done. Okay, our chicken's done. Again, it went for 30 minutes in the Instant Pot. We've released the steam. We've pulled the pan out. We've got it on a placeholder on the counter. And one thing I want to see here is if you look in here, you see all that yellow and all that goodness in there? Remember, all we put in there was water and chicken thighs. We're definitely not going to let that go to waste. Now, I'm going to pull one thigh out. Ezra, go ahead and turn our heat up. Get that back to a boil, and then go ahead and put our noodles in. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pull one chicken thigh out here. Obviously, I'm not gonna make you watch this whole process 8 times, but obviously, it goes without saying, this is extremely hot. If you have time to do all this in advance and let it cool, that might be the better thing. But in this state, it's also very easy to remove the chicken from the bone. So I have just used these tongs. I've removed the skin from the thighs, put it over here, and now we have the bone here. Chicken thigh only has one bone in it. We've removed it, removed the skin, removed the bone. What we have right here is all meat. I'm gonna do that with all 8 of these, then we'll chop it up, and then once the noodles are ready to go, or even before then, as the noodles are boiling, we will put all this chicken and then also all of this this broth that we've made. We're gonna put all that in the pot, okay? We'll be right back to finish up. Okay, we got our chicken thighs skinned and deboned, and we're now just gonna kind of chop this up into manageable sizes. This is obviously a preference. Some people might even want to shred this more than chop it. I prefer chop. I think it's probably just because, you know, my childhood growing up at Campbell's or whatever is always like cubes of chicken. I even had this the other day. I was making chicken pot pie, and the recipe actually called for to shred the chicken. And I thought that was weird. I didn't want shredded chicken in my chicken pot pie, and I probably don't want it in my chicken noodle soup either. So we've got this good and chopped up and ready to go in. Of course, some of it's going to be kind of shredded on its own just because it's so done. And then we also still have our broth over here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a slotted spoon. I'm just gonna kind of go through this broth, make sure we don't have any, there we go. Make sure we don't have any little pieces. There's a couple pieces of meat there. There's a piece of skin. You know, a couple of these little pieces aren't gonna hurt anything, but you just wanna get the big pieces out. All right, then we're going to go ahead and put our chicken in our pot. Go ahead and pull that. We've got our noodles. They've been boiling now for a few minutes. We can go ahead and turn that heat all the way down to low, Ezra. Just to get this stuff added. And, oh, I forgot I found those 2 bigger pieces. To chop those real quick. We're going to add this chicken. Again, preference for you, how much chicken you want in there, what cuts of chicken you want in there. That's all up to you. Our pot here from the Instapot's cooled enough, and I'm telling you guys, that is goodness right there. Pour that in. Got our chicken in. Gonna add a couple last things. So we're gonna do kosher salt. Enough salt in there on its own probably, but we do want to add some cracked pepper. Quite a bit of this. I like pepper in my soup. I like a lot of pepper in my bean soup and everything like that. Of course, I like hot things in general. Kind of a fan of those. Let's turn this back up. Let it pick up just a little bit. But I tell you what, guys, we are just about there. Don't forget, we have our last bit of aromatics. We've got our little bit of chopped celery leaf that we held over. Then we've got, like I said, probably about 1.5 cups of curly parsley. That looks like a lot, but I promise, guys, it will cook down tremendously. We're going to let this set. We'll probably bring it back up to a boil. Make sure the noodles get done for sure. You see all this green? Make sure that's all going to shrink down. It'll be just part of the broth, and then it'll be time to bowl up when we get back. And we'll show you what a bowl looks like. Okay, we're back. We brought this to a boil. That's all we did. Brought it to a boil, then cut it right off. Everything has come together in here. The chicken is integrated into the broth. We've got our noodles are done. They're ready. The aromatics, the herbs have released everything that they need to release. Everything's just come together very well. It looks absolutely delicious. So let's see a bowl, Ezra. So get a little bit of this. Let's get a little bit of broth. Get a little bit of these aromatics on top until we got a hot thing there, a hot burner. And that's it. Now I did, just so you guys know, I pulled out the bay leaves. You don't have to do that. A lot of times if I'm just serving for the folks here at the house, my wife and kids, I'll tell them, hey, there's bay leaves in that, depending on what it is, but sometimes I don't. Or sometimes I don't remove them. Not that I don't tell them. So here we go. We have our chicken noodle soup. Now I will tell you, just from looking at this, as we've already talked, it could probably use a little bit more broth. If I was going to do that, I would probably put in, I don't know, maybe 2-3 cups of water, another tablespoon of the Better Than bouillon, and it's good to go. Give us a taste, Ezra. Tell us what you think. It's hot. Yeah, just a little.
It's good.
Is it hot?
Yes, very hot.
Very hot?
Very
Okay.
hot, but it's very good.
Very good. Yes, we've already had a couple compliments from the other folks in the house about how things are smelling as well. So I think we've done it. Our homemade chicken noodle soup / chicken and noodles. You know, from start to finish, probably took us an hour. That included the 30 minutes in the Instant Pot. That included, you know, deboning the chicken and everything. So in an hour, you can have chicken noodle soup. Thanks for watching again. Might do another video, might not, I don't know. I'm having fun with it. So we'll see how this goes. Appreciate you watching.